A few years later in Florida, I got up one morning and there he was, bedraggled, stuporous, unkempt, and hungover, sleeping on our couch. He had been rolled and was broke. He had on a suit that should have been thrown away. S. Clyde was Stan again, and he was silent in a world of his own. Dad gently got him up and took him somewhere unknown to me. I'm sure he gave him money, but it was the last I ever saw of him. Some years later, he was killed when his car was hit by a train at a crossing in Louisiana. The circumstances I will never know. I always thought it could have been murder. The meeting began to break up as it was getting dusk. Trout left early, had some business, he said. S. Clyde was getting hungry and had a reservation at some supper club. He took Harry with him. The suite belonged to the Al's, and Ernie's wife was picking him up in front of the hotel. He couldn't drive. You didn't learn that kind of thing on the Lower East Side where he grew up. Dad and I said goodbye to Big Al and Little Al. I thanked Little Al for the shirt. He took the big stogie out of his mouth and gave me a kind of Talmudic nod, and Dad and I went down the hall to the elevator. Before we got on, he said, "You know what you did wrong, don't you?" "Yeah," I said. "I called Stan, Stan." "We are friends, but he wants to be called S. Clyde in front of others. You knew that, didn't you?" "Yes, I was mad at him for winning my dollar." "Stan has a way of doing that. That's why he's S. Clyde." He put his arm around me, patted me on the shoulder, and we got on the elevator, left the building, and went back to our motel. Mom and Dave had been swimming in the pool and were tired. We ate supper at the restaurant across the highway, went back to the room, and went to bed. The next day we kind of slept in and didn't leave till about 10. Nashville, here we come. It started out hot and got sizzling hot, so we drove up the road in our '49 three-holer Buick with all the windows down. Cars didn't have air conditioning then. The waves of heat bounced off the blacktop pavement, and when you looked out the back window of the Buick, the cars following us a quarter of a mile or so behind seemed to be traveling 10 feet off the ground. When we passed a field of cows, they were dancing in place in the air. That's hot. Dave and I were starting to make noises that boys make. Dave had made this wonderful discovery whereby if you put your hand in your opposite armpit, cup it just right, and come down on with your arm, you can make a wondrous sound, guaranteed to offend. I could never do this, so had to revert to the tried and true method of what is called raspberries. Dad was getting tired of this and was only moments away from uttering the dreaded and fearsome oath. "That's it. I'm going to stop this car, and then you're both in trouble." Mom interceded in a calm and even-tempered way. "You boys quiet down," she said, and placidly said to Dad, "Glenn, I'll need to stop in the next town." He would always comply. She would mediate tension really well. Dave and I kept quiet and began looking at road signs. Gadsden, 4 miles. Okay. We went on down the road and around a sweeping curve, through a woods, and there it was, a big sign put up by the Chamber of Commerce welcoming one and all, provided you were white, to Gadsden. Most small towns in the South in those days had two types of places that were air conditioned, the drugstores, and the movie houses. We traveled down the main drag to the town square, and there it was, a banner emblazed across the front window of Hogan's Cut Rate Drugs, announcing "Cooled by Carrier." We pulled in a diagonal parking spot 3 doors down from the cool paradise. Mom said, "I'll be right back." And Dad said, "Okay, we'll just wait." What? Dave and I just sat there dumbfounded. 5 minutes seemed like the preview of a hell hour. Dad started getting antsy, and we sure were. Dave started to do his trick. The sweat in his armpit made the potential really great, close to record breaking. But before that could actually take place, Dad said, "Boys, that was all it took. We were out of that Buick in no time flat, heading for Hogan's." Dave got to the door first, Dad and I right behind. What we witnessed then, I will always remember. There was Mom, pretty as a picture in her red and white sundress, sitting at the soda fountain counter facing away from it, toward us, smiling, and behind her were 4 tall cherry phosphates lined up just waiting for us. She knew her man. She knew her family. So we males sauntered up to the swivel stools. Dad kissed Mom, and we turned toward the counter like in a Busby Berkeley movie. Put the straws in our mouth and enjoyed the best cherry phosphates ever slurped. We stayed a while, soaked up the cool, nosed through the notions, bought a True Romance magazine, a Crime Reporter, a Plastic Man comic book, and a Daffy Duck. Got back in the car and drove on down the sticky road. We made Nashville that night, content that we were the beloved sheep of the gentle shepherdess, and that whatever happened next would be faced together.